Hey everybody, it's Steve Kolskat here for elitefts.com. We are here with Jennifer Petrosino, who is a new team member on the team. And welcome once again to the gym. We wanted to give everyone a little intro to Jen. A lot of you are familiar with her. She's done a lot of writing. She's done a lot of writing for our site. She's well known in the social media. She's well known in powerlifting and well known in the academic world. But Jen, if for someone that doesn't know you, if they're going to talk to one of your closest friends and find out what you are like as a person, how do you think one of those friends would describe you?
I would definitely say that anyone that knows me would agree that I'm 100% passionate about anything I do, whether it be lifting, whether it be academically. You know, once I'm invested in something, it's 100%. So the best way to describe me would be passionate, energetic, and highly caffeinated, all combined in one.
Okay. I think it's kind of funny you say that, because you and I had a discussion online about you were trying to practice relaxing, and you were going to use yoga as a way to do that. And by some of your Facebook posts, I'm like, are you trying to be competitive with your yoga? Doesn't that go against the relaxation? Tell us a little bit about why you went that path.
Because as a lifter, I used to have a lot of trouble kind of focusing at meets. I'd get really amped up. I'd be super crazy, and I would end up making a lot of mental errors. So my mom had been practicing yoga for a really long time, and she said, you need to try it so you can focus on breathing, so when you get to meets and you're nervous, you'll be able to kind of control your emotions. And, for me, that actually helped a lot because, sometimes when you're too heightened, it's not a good thing. So yes, I do like to kind of push the limit in a yoga class because I'm not a relaxed kind of person, but overall it's definitely helped with my breathing and my focusing and just helped me a lot on the platform.
Okay. I always think of the example of Ed Cohn. If you've ever seen any videos of him lifting, he was someone that was like the most laid back person at a meet, but then when he was lifting, he would have this laser focus that he could turn off and on, and he didn't waste his energy. So that sounds like, a natural maturity as a lifter that you have going on there.
Yeah, at the last meet, Ken Richardson got a photo of me, and I'm sitting there like this, like on the floor with my legs crossed, kind of like meditating, and I thought it was the funniest picture ever, because if a picture's worth 1,000 words, I feel like that really summed up my last training cycle.
Okay. Let's go a little bit more about giving people a kind of a sense of you. I know that family is really important to you.
Yeah.
Tell me about your family. What do your parents do? Do you have brothers and sisters?
I'm an only child, which probably explains a lot about my personality, but my dad works in real estate and my mom is an interior designer. Both parents kind of never put too much pressure on me. They'd always said, work your hardest. And for me, I'm one of those people that was something I applied to everything, because I was like, if I work my hardest, I can't let them down. So, as far as life in general, like whether it be school, whether it be lifting, whether it just be life, I always tried to apply myself as hard as I could, unturn every stone, so that way I felt like I didn't let them down, because they're so important to me that I can't even deal with the idea of disappointing them.
I think a lot of people understand why guys get into lifting, because a lot of times if you're a skinny guy or you're a short guy, that being stronger, kind of there's some social advantage to that. Being a woman, you're a small, petite woman, there's not really a lot of negative bias against that. So can you tell us what drew you into powerlifting?
Okay, so when I was 13, my dream had always been to be a football strength coach. So when I was in football, I learned how to clean with the football players, and I did everything I could be, to set myself up to be a strength coach. And I was working in my second internship in South Florida, and I was around a lot of guys that were powerlifters. We had this amazing assistant strength coach, Frank Wintrich. He was an amazing powerlifter, and my best friend, Paula Need. And, they were like very into it. So I wanted to be one of the boys real bad. So I was like, I'm going to train how they train, And then before I knew it, I was in my first meet, and that was just kind of how the love grew. And it was just something that was a part of me after that. And I just wanted to keep excelling to the best of my ability.
Okay. And what is it that you love about powerlifting?
I think I was never anyone with a lot of natural strength ability. I had to work really hard, and I love the idea that what you put into your training is what you get out of it. I love that I was in control of the gains that I was going to make, because I mean, obviously you can't always predict like I'm going to get a 50-pound PR or I'm going to get a 5-pound PR, but I liked that, you know, hard work was what was going to build your success, because eventually, you know, hard work kind of matches up to natural talents of people. So I was like, well, I definitely know I can be consistent and I can work hard, so you know, I'm going to keep beating my head against a wall until I finally break to where I want to break into.
Okay. And what type of people, who do you look up to, either in powerlifting, other sports, or just in general? Do you have any role models?
I think in powerlifting, you know, one lifter I've always looked up to is Cheryl Anderson, you know, single ply 97-pound weight class. I think she's an amazing lifter. If you look at her over the years, she's always hitting PRs. I think at her last meet, she just set another world record. You know, she's had a kid and she came back down to the 105 weight class. And, you know, I've always looked up to her as a lifter. And, you know, I actually had the opportunity to talk to her online a little bit. And she was looking to get rid of like some 97 like single ply gear. And she was like, you know, do you want to grab it from me? And I was like, are you kidding? Like, that would be like wearing Michael Jordan's shoes, you know? That would be the most amazing thing ever. So as a lifter, you know, I've always looked up to her because I know her training and her intensity, it was something I always wanted to match.
Okay. And what do you use for sources of information as you put together your training program, and or in the past as you developed your training program? Where did you draw that from?
You know, in the past, I had always taken a lot of things from Westside Barbell. I spent 4 years in a Westside Barbell certified gym in Miami called Idolmaker, you know, and I learned a ton. Randy Scotes was an amazing gym owner. He taught me an immense amount that I can't even begin to thank anyone else for. So, you know, that was kind of where I began to get submerged. And then I was in class, exercise science-based, and I started to look at studies, and I'd be like, hey, you know, this is obviously science. And this is, you know, what I'm learning on the meathead side of things. Like, how can I apply and merge the two? So it's just a combination, you know, when I developed my own programs of taking what I'd seen in studies and then taking what I'd learned that worked in the gym and looking at like other lifters and saying, hey, you know, what are they doing? What have I done that's worked and hasn't worked? And then what am I learning? And trying to kind of combine everything into one.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about your early competitive history.
So as a lifter, you know, I've always competed at 105 and 97. My first 2 meets were terrible. My first meet, I bombed on squat. You know, I wasn't ready for anything. I just didn't know any of the cues for, you know, when to squat, when not to. And, you know, at that point I had no coach, so it was kind of just a mess. And then my second meet was the Pro-Am, and I was in Cincinnati. You know, I had a pretty good squat. We got to bench, and my butt didn't stick on the bench. So I missed, you know, all 3 of my bench attempts, which is really hard because, you know, like Louis Simmons is sitting right next to me and he's like trying to help me and I'm bombing out of a meet. So, you know, those first 2 meets were really hard, and that was kind of like one of those points where I feel like some lifters get into it because they're strong right away and they're successful. You know, for me, that was kind of like a gut check. It was like, I really love this, so I'm going to keep going. So those first 2 meets were kind of bad. And then from there, you know, I got a lot of guidance at Idolmaker, and from there my lifts started to just kind of go up and up and up. So it eventually got me to the point where I am now, you know, where I'm starting to do a little bit better than I was before.
Okay. You seem to, has it been like the last year that it's gotten to like a higher level for you?
I think I would definitely say it's been about a year, a little bit more, like a little bit over a year, yeah.
Okay. And what have been some of the biggest challenges you've had to overcome as a lifter?
I think there's a couple things as a lifter. You know, I'm not going to lie to anyone. Competing in lightweight classes, you know, when you're training hard is something that's very difficult for me to do. So, you know, I've had good cuts and I've had bad cuts. That's one thing that's been hard. Another thing is like my own competitive mindset, you know. At times there's numbers I want to hit and it hasn't allowed me to pick the smartest openers at times. You know, I think I've learned a lot better now because I've been mentored by Tony Garland, who's amazing, and, you know, he's taught me it's not where you start, it's where you finish. So, you know, basically once I got under Tony's wing, that was when my lifting really took off because, you know, basically he guided me to be able to succeed at meets. You know, before him, I was just a mess, you know, but now it's a lot better.
Okay. You also kind of bring the academic side. Want to be a strength coach. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What type of things you've done and what you'd like to do?
So I had worked as a strength coach in my undergrad degree, so I was like a student strength coach at the University of Miami with the football and track teams during my entire undergrad, and I had done internships at different schools. when I graduated, I had gone on to Utah State University, and I was working as a graduate assistant. So those were all amazing experiences because for me, strength conditioning was something I always loved and was passionate about. So I was basically living my dream. So for me, it was great because on top of that, I was also like a huge nerd in school. So it was great for me to be able to like see the research that was going on and then apply it, especially, when I was at Utah State and I was developing programs. Like for me, that was the greatest because I was really able to take the science and the meathead and kind of combine them into one. But one thing I did notice, through all of this is that there's a huge gap, between academics and between strength and conditioning, like as far as the actual profession goes. And, for a long time I was like, I can change this as a strength coach. But it kind of got to the point where I realized that I couldn't change it as a strength coach because education starts at the university level and then it moves to the strength and conditioning. So the people that are teaching kids that are like, hey, I want to be a strength coach are, academics. So if kids are only learning A and there's like B, C, and D going on, they're never going to know unless they try to learn on their own. So it got me to the point where I'm at now where I was like, if I can go back to school and get my doctorate, it'll allow me to be in a position to put out better information. So hopefully I can start to merge the two.
Some people would say that a lot of the things that powerlifters are doing is ahead of the academic world, and then they come along a few years later and kind of test and verify that what we've been doing is right all along. So
I can only hope that we get to a point where we're finally testing things that we actually want to know, not that we already know work. So hopefully I can be a part of that. We'll see what happens.
Okay. Over the past year, what would you say is the biggest thing that you've learned academically?
I think the biggest thing that I've learned academically was for a lot of my programming, for a while, everything was geared towards strength, and it was funny because like I'd be in classes and I'd see all the studies about, the force velocity curve, and I completely knew that I had to, pay attention to the velocity side of the curve, but I would neglect it when I was writing my own programs, and then, it finally hit me one day. I was like, this is science. It's saying it to me right now. I need to pay attention to the velocity if I want to keep shifting the maximum force. And once I actually finally started to address that in my training, obviously like science said it would, my lift started to go up. So it was really applying the velocity curve, force velocity, and understanding it to my training,
Okay. My follow-up question was going to be, what is the biggest thing that you've learned in the last year athletically? Would it be the same thing?
No, I think athletically, because I'm so, I always think, what if I did more in training? What if I had trained harder? What if I had, done an extra exercise? Would I have been stronger? And I think that sometimes can be really bad because then, I end up writing my program and it's really sound, but then I end up deviating in training because I'm like, I should just do a little bit more. So I think the biggest thing I learned athletically was having the confidence to just give my program to somebody else who knows more than I do and letting them be in control, because sometimes it's better to just be an athlete and get coached regardless of what you know for you to be able to excel.
Definitely. Let's talk a little bit about it as a member of Team Elite FTS. How did you become aware of Elite FTS?
Well, so when I was, back in my first internship and, Coach Frank had, been telling us to explore new things, when I was at that first internship, I only really knew, Olympic lifts and that I had done in high school, and I knew basic things about training, and I'd read a bunch of football strength books, but I didn't know that anything else existed, And Frank, he opened my eyes to Elite, he opened my eyes to Westside, and he opened my eyes to a lot of things, same thing that Pete Bomaredo did when I worked for him in the private sector. They were like, search out information, and this is a great place to start. And, once I found out about Elite, I was obsessed because I was like, this is amazing. This is all this free information, I'm just going to submerge myself in it if I want to really expand my horizons. And, that was how I kind of came to know about the company and, fell in love because all it was doing was giving out free information to people. And, I would go to class when I was in college and I'd be like, hey guys, check out this website. And I'd be passing out the website on pieces of paper to different kids in class. Because I'd be like, this expanded my horizons. Maybe I can expand everyone else's.
Excellent. And when did you decide that you wanted to be a part of Elite FTS as a team member?
I think when I realized how amazing the company was, it's always been in the back of my mind. You always want to be able to represent something that you care about. So I had always wanted to become a good enough lifter to be able to represent a company like this, And it was something that was so amazing that I wanted to be a part of it. So I would probably say from day one it was in the back of my mind somewhere, but I knew I had a ton of work to do, and I still have a ton more to do.
Well, it's good having you a part of things. I'm sure you're going to be with us for many years, and we want to watch you develop as a lifter and watch you develop as a strength coach, and it's good to have you here.
Thanks, it's amazing to be here.